Imagine that there's a medical test that has a 80% chance of correctly identifying that you have a disease if you have it, and a 90% chance of correctly identifying that you don't have the disease if you don't have it. So given that someone takes the test and gets back a positive result, what's the chance that the person has the disease? 90%? The correct answer is around 7%, and it's all Bayesian. You are a prediction machine. Humans make predictions all the time, whether we know it or not. You predict whether clicking on a video will make you satisfied. You predict whether when you open the fridge, is there going to be something to eat? And when your predictions are wrong, you're surprised. There's a mental disturbance. Any belief that you hold right now is called your prior probability. Imagine a child learning that turning on a switch causes the light to turn on. Repeating that action over many months, the child learns that turning on the switch causes the light to turn on. His prior probability that the switch turning on leads to the light turning on is 100%. He hasn't learned any other way. Then one day, he turns on the switch and the light doesn't turn on. Maybe there's an electrical outage. But now there's a mental disturbance. It's surprising. Up to this point, he's learned that there's a 100% solid causation between the two actions. But now, he subconsciously shifts down his prior probability, the belief, from 100% to maybe 99%. Now he's learned to account for the small possibility that turning on a switch may not cause the light to turn on. This mental shift in the probability that you give to things leads to the formation of your posterior probability. So now the belief has adjusted given new information, new evidence. This is basically how everyone forms their worldview growing up. As you get new evidence from different sources and perspectives, you adjust your preconceived notions of the world into the new direction according to the new evidence received. And this process of self-adjusting is Bayesian. Even ChatGPT thinks and learns like a Bayesian. So this book, Everything is Predictable, is about the Bayesian thinking, the maths that Thomas Bayes worked out a long time ago. In the early 2010s, there was this big crisis in the scientific world, referred to as the replication crisis, because it was found that a lot of scientific studies that we had considered as established findings and knowledge could not actually be replicated. So scientists, when repeating previous studies, could not replicate the findings and conclusions that the previous studies had arrived on. And this was a shocker because it revealed some dubious practices that may have developed in the scientific world, such as p-hacking. A p-value of 0.05 means that if someone conducts an experiment and obtains some results, the p-value of 0.05 means that the chance of the results being as extreme as the results obtained given the hypothesis is 1 in 25%. Most people would consider a p-value of 0.05 on a clinical test to be credible, but the downside is that scientists can conduct the same test many times, let's say 20 times, until they get the one trial where they obtain the extreme results, discard the rest, and just publish that novel, shocking result. So people had found that researchers were incentivized in the wrong ways to purposely find more shocking results so that they could get them published into academic journals and further their careers. So this is why you should use Bayesian thinking when you encounter new evidence, even if it's supporting your beliefs or contradicting your beliefs. Let's say you've had the belief up till now that traveling in airplanes is safer than other modes of transportation. But then suddenly there's a new study that has found that actually it's more dangerous. The Bayesian way would be to look at the study and determine its credibility and shift your previous beliefs, your prior probabilities, up or down, and the amount by which is the strength of the evidence that you've seen. So this new study, we've looked at it more carefully and it just came out and it's not even peer reviewed and the source is quite questionable. So then you would shift your prior probability of airplane travel being safe slightly, ever so slightly down. And this actually explains why people, as we get older, we become more set in our ways. We're harder to change. It's because we've become such good predictors of the world that our prior probabilities on everything are super strong. So when we get new evidence suggesting that we may be wrong, it takes very credible and a lot of evidence to change our worldview in any meaningful way. Whereas if you're a child, you don't know much about the world, you get some new information that's not even very credible that things are this way, so you shift your already weak prior probability by quite a lot. Because it's weak, you haven't had much time to prove that the previous belief is a good predictor of the world. And the author even speculates that this is why people who have schizophrenia experience the things that they experience. It's because their prior probabilities are weak permanently. So let's say you're at home alone and you hear a creaking noise, a door creaking. You've lived for so many years hearing this creaking noise in your house, so your prior probability is quite strong that the sound is just because of the wind, and you've experienced for so many years that this sound is harmless. Your prior probability is strong that there's nothing to worry about. This one explanation that it's just the wind has a much higher weightage compared to other possible explanations, like there's someone breaking into your house causing the sound. That would have a much lower weightage. However, for people with schizophrenia, their prior probability is permanently weak, so they're much more likely to believe other explanations, such as there's someone out there watching them and that caused the creaking sound. It hasn't been proven scientifically yet, but I find this theory quite interesting. There was a lot of maths in this book, which took me quite a while to read through and work out on my own as well. But I did enjoy the small historical parts where it goes into the experiences of Thomas Bayes himself. And honestly, it does explain quite a lot of this world, but just be careful not to apply Bayesian thinking to everything in life. Just like how normal distributions, the bell curve, is found in a lot of places, but it would be wrong to apply the normal distribution to every single statistic. So even if you have no interest in maths, you don't have to read this entire book, but start to think more about statistics and what we can learn from them, especially when it is so freely available to us.